I extend a special welcome to those of you who are guests or are feeling new to our community. I invite you to follow our link, the link to our website, ufpc.org, and let us know how we might contact you, or if you have any questions we can answer. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Chris Jackson, and I'll be serving as the worship associate for this service. Our senior minister, the Reverend Rebecca Froome, is currently on sabbatical through August 23rd. Special thanks to Jimmy Grassman and Marley Cox for their help with the technology this morning. And today we're very excited to welcome our beloved Minister Emeritus, the Reverend Dr. Sheldon Bennett, as our guest minister. This is the first time Sheldon has officiated at one of our services since he retired. Sheldon served as minister of the United First Parish Church from 1986 to 2012. Now, as Minister Emeritus, Sheldon serves the wider community as member of the Quincy Affordable Housing Trust Committee, a member of the board and treasurer of Quincy Community Action Programs, and a director of the Friends of Butler's Pond. He and Molly attend First Church in Boston, where he is active in GBIO, and Molly serves on the church's standing committee. He also serves on a number of denominational boards and is studying classical piano at the South Shore Conservatory. Welcome, Sheldon.
Oh, thank you, Chris, and good morning to everyone.
So, Sheldon, you have to share.
Oh, right. I have to. I'm still learning how to do all this. I need to. Right. Okay. Thank you. This is a. And. Well, I did something. We're in trouble now.
Okay, I'm going to share back, and then you'll share, and then you go to advanced.
I'm having trouble moving my screens around here. This is all new. All right, let's see. Where are we? Okay, I want to share.
Okay, go share. Then you go to advanced.
It's all about sharing. Now I have to press that, and okay, there's what I was looking for. It was off the screen. All right.
There you go.
Good morning, everybody. Here we are. So let us gather in the circle of friendship around our computer screens. Let us gather in the freedom of the Spirit, in memory and hope. Let us gather to celebrate the life and the love that we have in community together. It is good to be with one another. Chris will now light the chalice to begin our worship.
So Debbie will help me this morning by lighting the chalice, and we invite you to light a chalice at home if you'd like to. Our chalice reading this morning is a poem by Vermont poet Susan Reed. It's called "Thank God It's Not November," of Villanelle. Thank God it is April, not November. In these fearful, lonely days, hold that blessing like an ember. When blessings are hard to remember, in all ways or uncertain ways, thank God it is April, not November. Returning birds sing with rising timber. In new quiet, hear cardinals and jays. Hold that blessing like an ember. Buds unfurl from their dark slumber, rising up hillsides like living haze. Thank God it is April, not November. The earth of which we are a small number turns now toward the light now, not away. Hold that blessing like an ember. When early sun cuts short your slumber of dark dreams in these difficult days, thank God it is April, not November. Hold that blessing like an ember. All right, now please join me in reading our covenants. It should appear on the screen. As a free fellowship of this historic church, we unite to lift our hearts and open our mind to a larger reality, to accept, support, and encourage one another, to seek the wisdom in all religions, to cherish and sustain the web of life, and to strive for justice, compassion, and peace. The first hymn this morning is Here We Have Gathered. It's number 360 in the gray hymnal. If you have one of those, the words should also appear on your screen. This is
Good morning. I am the Reverend Sheldon Bennett. People call me Sheldon. Now, many of you probably don't know me, but I was the minister of your church many years ago before Reverend Rebecca. And I thank her for inviting me to be with you this morning. I've been so looking forward to seeing everybody. I was hoping to see you in the big church, in the pews together, singing hymns, and you children coming down front for the message of all ages. Well, because of this nasty little virus going around, we need to take care. And we need everybody to do everything we can to help keep everybody as safe and possible, and healthy as possible. So we can't be in the big church this morning, but right now we can be the church together, right here in front of our computer screens. So children, I have an idea. Let's do this. Each of you sort of come down front a little bit, or maybe snuggle up with your favorite teddy bear. Now, let's imagine all the other children and adults in front of their video screens too. And now together, imagining all of ourselves, each in our own homes, but together, we are a circle of friendship all around the city and neighboring towns. Okay, good. Now, first, I want to tell you about what's on the window here, right behind me. 8 years ago, the children of United First Parish Church made this beautiful quilt as a gift for my retirement, and they named it the Peace Quilt. And you can see on the quilt, you can see little V symbol, victories, peace signs, and doves, peace doves, and birds, and flaming chalices, all sorts of wonderful things. And they signed their names on the back of the quilt. It's one of my very favorite things. And with the daylight kind of shining through the quilt, well, it's sort of like a stained glass window. Now, I need to get a little serious here because I know it's hard to have to stay at home all the time, but it's really, really important that we help keep each other safe. And I know you want to be free, to go places, to do things, to be with friends. Well, me too. But right now, we are a church together. And we can sing together, or at least we can say the words if we don't think we're so good at singing. And we can hold each other in our hearts. And this is our freedom. We are free to love, always. And no one can take this freedom away from us. So children, let's do this. A little meditation about our being a church right now. And adults, you can take part of this too. So let's all sit up straight and close your eyes just a little bit and take a breath. Breathing in and breathing out. I know you know how to do this. Breathing in, breathing out the breath of life. Now, imagine that you are sitting in a circle with all the other children of your church school and adults with the other adults. Now in your mind, look around and see each other's face. I mean, in your mind, see their smile and hear their laughter and remember something very special about them. Okay, just imagine holding your hearts, the faces and voices of all the people you know in the church. Now, I want you to know this. As you are holding another person in your heart, someone else is holding you in their heart. Each of you being surrounded by the spirit of love that holds our church together. So children, this is what I want you to know most of all. Each of you are loved, no matter how scary things may be. Your parents love you and your church loves you. And the church wants everyone to take good care of each other. Now, may love surround you and peace be with you today and every day.
Thank you, Sheldon. Now move to joys and sorrows. Through the sharing of our joys and sorrows, we create a sacred space where we are deeply present with ourselves and with one another. This is a time to briefly but fully share the life milestones that lift your spirits in joy or hope, or the pain and loss that fill you with heartache. If you have a joy or sorrow to share in a moment, please raise your hand and we will try to call on you by name so that we can each have a turn to share. If you're attending by phone, we will have a moment to call on you as well. At this time, turn on your cameras, and when we call on you, turn on your microphone. When you speak, please share your name and speak clearly so that we can understand you. And as we begin our sharing, we light a candle of joy, knowing that a joy shared is a joy magnified. And we also light a candle of sorrow, knowing that a sorrow shared is a sorrow diminished. Let us open our hearts to one another.
Brenda's got her hand up.
So I am presenting a joy. Florence Noonan had her surgery on Friday, and I got a message from a friend of hers indicating that the surgeon said that the surgery went well. She was done by about 3:30. They anticipated she'd be in the ICU overnight and then proceeding to probably a med-surg floor for 5 or 6 days following. But so far, they were pleased with the outcome of the surgery. More to come.
Great, thank you. Fiona has her hand up.
This is Daphne. I have a joy. I'm celebrating my daughter's 23rd birthday, and I'm very happy that it's sunny out so we can go for a walk.
Thank you very much.
Kate has her hand up. I have two sorrows. On Monday was the 2-year anniversary of my grandfather's death, and then on Friday was the 7-year anniversary of my cousin's death. Both on my mom's side of the family. So just keep my family and the rest of us who knew them all in your thoughts. That's over the next couple weeks.
You have
Joan,
your hands up?
I can unmute the phone, folks.
I saw Leslie also had his hand up.
Leslie?
Good morning, Leslie. Obviously, I have a mild joy. Like everybody else, we've been trapped in here for I have no idea how long now, weeks, and we now have a roommate, and nobody has killed anybody. You know, my wife and I have gone through a whole bunch of stressors: dead parents, vacation, papering rooms, and we have very rarely had a fight, and so far we haven't had a fight here. So I consider this to be another acid test of our solid relationship. Not much of a joy, but hey, you gotta hang on to what you got nowadays.
Thank you. Is there anybody on the phone that would like to give a joy or sorrow? All right.
Anyone else? All right. As we end our sharing, we light a final candle representing all the joys and sorrows we hold silently in our hearts. May the light of these candles and the compassion of this community remind us that wherever we are on our journeys, we are each worthy of love and we are each able to love. At this time, I ask that you turn your microphones and cameras off. This will help our message to be heard more clearly. Sheldon will do the meditation and prayer.
Let these moments be a time for silent meditation and prayer. Moments to hold a loved one in your thoughts, to take counsel of the deep wisdom within you, to offer a personal prayer of gratitude or lament, to let yourself open to the spirit of life and love that moves within, between, and beyond us all. I invite us to let our bodies relax, our minds to become quiet and attentive, our hearts open. Let us become aware of the natural movement of our breathing. Breathing in, breathing out, the breath of life. Spirit of life, Holy One, God of our faith, whom we know by many names. In this season of the spring, we rejoice in the miracle of life that's in bud all around us. So much is coming into bloom. So much wisdom and love is stirring within us to set us free from all our old winter places. We give thanks for the gift of life this day. But frankly, Spirit, we are not feeling so good right now. We are unsettled. We are unsure what the future may hold. We are, if we are honest with ourselves, we are just a little bit afraid. Things are not normal. Give us to tap those spiritual resources that are deep within us. Resources of faith and hope and love that cast out fear and empower our living. In these times of uncertainty and anxious concern, especially we give thanks for family and friends who love and support one another, and for this church, which holds us in loving spiritual community together. For those of us who are anxious and fearful, may we know we are not alone, but are held within the embrace of a great love. In this time of contagion and shutdown, we hold in our hearts and prayers healthcare workers, police officers, grocery store clerks, and all the many others who perform the services that are necessary to keep all of us fed and safe, and to keep critical services functioning, and who risk their health each day, courageously and often heroically. May they keep strength to meet the demands of what is being asked of them, and may our leaders rise above petty concerns to provide the needed resources for protection and care. Yet, we take heart. We see people all around us responding with wonderful creativity to serve and help others. For this and for them, we give thanks. Spirit of life, through whom the power of your love, may our living be for the fullness of life in all its goodness, kindness, and joy. These things we pray in the name of all that is holy, loving, and true. Amen, and blessed be. Let us join in singing together now, or saying aloud, "My life flows on in endless song." It's number 108 in your gray hymnal. If you have one, the words will be posted.
My life flows on in endless song of others' lamentation. I hear the reel of far-off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing?
All right, this is Stewardship Month at UFPC, and I invite Brenda Reed, Chair of the Congregational Life Committee, to offer a testimonial.
Good morning. As many of you know, I chaired the Stewardship Committee for many years before my recent stint as board chair 3 years ago. Stewardship is a board position that most people avoid, possibly because of a discomfort in talking about pledging and all that goes with it. Yet, I found heading up stewardship to be very rewarding because it enabled me to meet and know so many members and friends of the congregation. Once I stopped writing up and mailing pledge drive materials, then collecting pledge forms, I was never as up to date about the lives of our membership or able to match names to faces quite so well. Some people pledged money, some people pledged stock, and in difficult financial times, some people pledged volunteer time. Sometimes I received sweet notes along with the pledge cards. The year that we celebrated with a ska band and a homemade pie contest was probably a banner year for feedback. However, very occasionally, people would share wrenching, vulnerable stories of job loss, illness, and debt, expressing their regret that they could not pledge more to support the congregation. As I think back on it, even though I always felt that the role of stewardship included stewarding the humanity of the congregation, my message was mostly about sustaining the work and mission of the congregation, and of course, taking care of our beautiful historic building. In the last 2 months, however, our world has turned upside down due to the COVID virus pandemic. In response, the board leadership, our ministry team, and the UFPC membership have stopped working on projects that we had planned for the year to instead focus exclusively on the pastoral and spiritual needs of the congregation. I cannot think of any time in the history of at least of my 20-some years of membership, when pastoral and spiritual care was the exclusive priority of congregational leadership. It is truly remarkable how quickly we made the pivot. I've recently been a recipient of that pastoral and spiritual support. I was feeling well and truly overwhelmed. I was working full-time, trying and failing to fill my volunteer role at church and providing care for a terminally ill friend. When I finally admitted that I couldn't do it all and I needed help to organize pastoral care during this time of crisis, that was my failing volunteer duty as the chair of congregational life, the response was immediate, gratifying, and uplifting. The board stepped in and as a team communicated with each member of the congregation. They did this as they worked creatively and quickly to move Sunday services online. Personally, John and I received cards, calls, supportive emails, and meals. It was a lovely community response to our time of need. 2 things had to happen in order for that kind of response to come about. I had to admit that I needed help, and the congregation had to be there to offer its loving embrace. Any one of us can be on either side of that equation on any given day. Stewardship in this context is the pledge we each make, not only to sustain the church financially, but to also serve one another in volunteer roles, on committees, and in leadership positions. It is our promise to be there for one another. When this pandemic inevitably resolves, as I believe it will, and we go back to whatever business as usual looks like, I look forward to sitting in the sanctuary again. But I also look forward to maintaining a level of virtual connection with folks who cannot be physically present. We will return to our important projects and to-do lists, but we will be forever changed. Virtual or physical, please let us not lose sight of the collective pastoral and spiritual needs that are the beating heart of this congregation, and step up to do your part by serving in volunteer and leadership roles. Thank you in advance for pledging your time and treasure to support United First Parish Church.
The reading this morning is a poem titled Kindness by Naomi Shihab Nye. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go, so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you. He too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to mail letters and purchase bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, it is I you have been looking for, and then goes with you everywhere like a shadow or a friend. It is such a joy to be with you after these many years. My first time back in the pulpit, as it were, at least here at United First Parish Church. Like you, I am learning new ways of relating together. I mean, this is the first time I've tried to do this, but how does one preach to a computer screen? Particularly when I really can't see it very well with these variable focus glasses. And I want to thank the worship associates, Chris and Jamie, and Tech Guru Wiley for putting this service together and teaching me how to do this. They're a great team. Truly, it is wonderful to see or imagine so many of you out there, longer term members I remember, and many new faces and names that some of them I see up on the screen here during Joys and Sorrows, and names that I see in the newsletter. And this is as it should be. Congregations are ever renewing, new members entering, others passing on. And with you, I too am saddened by the recent deaths of Brooks White and Louise Riley, two wonderfully caring and beautiful souls. Their lives, their love, now merge with those of countless others over the centuries to enrich and continue on the living spirit of this congregation. I am also honored by Rebecca's gracious invitation to lead worship this Sunday. When we met in February, she told me that the worship theme for April is liberation, it being the season of spring, Passover and Easter, joyful celebrations of renewal and freedom. That now seems so very long ago, before this new reality of contagion was fully understood. But liberation is exactly the theme for such a time as this. Springtime, the bursting forth of nature, from winter's grip and the exuberance of renewal. Passover, which begins this Wednesday in Jewish tradition, that remembers the story of a people's liberation from oppression. And today, Palm Sunday in Christian tradition, which remembers Jesus's entry into the holy city to observe Passover, as it was, but in a larger purpose, to set the spirit free. And next Sunday, Easter, and its celebration of resurrection and life transformed. Well, so here we are, sheltering in place, self-isolating, feeling uncertain and anxious, not knowing the future. We know that it's necessary to do this for our health and safety and for the health and safety of everyone else. But it's hard. Our lives are disrupted. We are losing so much. Loss of income for so many. And for all of us, the loss of freedom of movement. Loss of face-to-face communication or connection. The loss of familiar routines that gave direction to our kind of stability to our daily lives. This is why religious rituals, worship, singing hymns together that remember the deep stories that hold us as a community together, to keep it strong through hard times. That's why these rituals are so important. Singing of hymns, especially in times such as this. Now, science is learning a lot about this coronavirus, COVID-19, what it is, how it works. And first, we need to remind ourselves that this tiny virus has no evil intention. There's nothing against us. Well, actually, maybe it does, but it's simply a part of nature. Just a little bit of genetic material wrapped up in a tiny molecular ball with little spikes sticking out. It simply does what it has evolved to do. Infect humans, multiply, and propagate itself like crazy. And we're learning how it does all these things so we can sort of put it in its place. And it's doing all this by the laws of physics and chemistry and biology. Under an electron microscope, it's a thing of beauty, at once fascinating and also terrifying. Yes, nature's beauty is sublime, but it can also be lethal. More than a romantic idea, the interconnected web of life commands our deep respect. But the present contagion is as much a spiritual contagion as it is a biological one. As the virus spreads physical disease, our response as a society is also spreading, at least in some parts of society, is spreading, certain people are spreading a contagion of rumor and superstition, anxiety and dread, magnified by the very technology that also allows us to stay connected as spiritual community together. Now, fear serves us well when it evokes creative response that moves us to protect and care and reach out to one another, but not so well when we give in to self-serving behavior at the cost of neighbors or to blaming and bigotry and political scheming for advantage, as we see some folks doing. Now, I have to be honest, I admit to my own moments of dread. This contagion does bring us face to face with our mortality. As rational beings, we can understand what's happening, and we can and do take practical measures. But we're also creatures with emotions, and our emotions have their own knowledge. They know what's happening at a deeper level than our reason alone. With every news report, my emotions make deep connections to the so many people in so many places who are vulnerable, members of my own family in different parts of the country. People So many people with few or inadequate resources and little protection. Those in refugee camps, Syria and islands in the Aegean Sea, other places. Those in under-resourced hospitals serving poor and minority neighborhoods. Folks in nursing homes, prisoners crowded together, or people in subway cars in New York City. Necessary travel for lower wage workers, providing critical health and public services. My heart goes out, and I feel dread by what lies ahead. Frankly, compassion takes a whole lot of energy and can be emotionally draining. This time of contagion is calling us to draw on spiritual powers that are deep within us and among us, powers of hope and love and trust in the larger reality of all being. Our gathering in worship helps attune our bodies and our emotions with our minds and our ideals so as to maintain our spiritual balance. So, where is the good news this morning? Well, I've already given you some hints, but Passover and Palm Sunday both offer some hints. These are each stories within two great narratives of the human spirit. They may carry some faint memory of events long ago, but history's not the point. Like all great narratives, these are stories, whatever their basis in historical events, these are stories with power to give us insight into the deeper truth of our own humanity, whatever our personal religious languages. These two celebrations are about liberation of the human spirit. They are powerful stories of ultimate hope and radical love. Now, this is where I think these stories get really interesting. And Naomi Nye's poem helped me see this. It seems to me that a critical insight of both celebrations is that going through loss is crucial to realizing our spiritual freedom. Whether it's our freedom, whether it's political freedom from oppression or psychological freedom from mental dungeons, or spiritual freedom from existential dreads or fears or death itself. Now, I know most of you know the dramatic part of the Passover story. Moses speaking truth to Pharaoh, the plagues, the parting of the sea. Yes, it's a story of liberation from oppression, and it's a great story. As I'm sure you know, Passover is named for the passing over of the homes of the Israelites by the terrible plague of death, as promised by their God. But all this is only the first scene, only the first few pages of the much larger story of the Exodus, which takes up the rest of the book of Exodus and the entire remaining 3 books of the Torah. The larger story is about that liberation that comes by living through loss. Once free from Pharaoh's rule, the people were now on their own, out in the vast wilderness of Sinai. I've been there. It's a very tough and forbidding landscape. And once out there, finding themselves isolated and without any resources for hundreds of miles, the oppression in Egypt didn't seem so bad after all. In Egypt, they had had food, a roof over their head. Daily life was predictable, miserable, but predictable and routine. All this was now lost. Life was now hard and uncertain. and they had no one to look to but themselves and the larger spiritual consciousness with which they forged themselves into a community. But in that hardship, 40 years of it, the people did forge a new religious consciousness and a new social order, elements of which live in our Unitarian Universalist congregations today. The idea, the understanding of the worth and dignity of each individual person, a covenant community together founded on principles, shared principles of justice and kindness, with a religious consciousness of a larger reality of being, calling them in to loving community. This new religious consciousness came to a powerful expression a few hundred years later in another time of hardship. Came to expression in a vision that now was for all the nations, for all people. The prophet Isaiah gives this new consciousness a powerful summation in these words. The Spirit of God has sent me to bring good news to the oppressed, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, release to the prisoners, to comfort all who mourn, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Now, a few centuries later, in the village of Nazareth, a young rabbi, Jesus, sat down with the older rabbis in the synagogue, in the local synagogue there in Nazareth. The older sages handed Jesus a scroll. He stood up, unrolled the scroll, and he read to them the very words from Isaiah I just quoted. Then he sat down and he waited. All eyes were on him. And he said, "Today the scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." Silence. Then they ran Jesus out of town. Now, this was just the beginning of his ministry in Galilee. 3 years later, he goes up to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover. Now, in Christian tradition, Palm Sunday is about the day Jesus enters Jerusalem at the beginning of the week of the Passover observance. And he comes down from the Mount of Olives on the back of a donkey, surrounded by a motley crew of outcasts, marginalized folks of various ethnic origins, waving palm branches and shouting hallelujah. I can sort of imagine the Roman sentries up there on the wall watching all this with a sort of a puzzled amusement. But by this little street drama, Jesus brings the spiritual message of liberation straight into all of that little crowd around him, straight into their world of suffering and death. He was bringing that message of liberation into the very center of worldly power, the holy city. The donkey, the palms, the hosanna, these were each symbols, well-known symbols from the Hebrew prophets. Jesus' entry is only a small scene in the larger story of Easter. The center of this larger story is a story of extreme loss, symbolized by the cruelly unjust crucifixion of one who was purely innocent, whose only crime was to embody in his very person the truth of love. The truth of love is the power that sets all people free. From so great a loss, it seems, comes an ultimate triumph of life over death, a triumph of love over all the spiritual and moral contagion that is loose in the world. Perhaps the poem Kindness by Naomi Nye that I read tells the same story, different words perhaps, in a gentler way, though that poem is just as powerful. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, it is you I have been looking for, and then goes with you everywhere. Behold, the Spirit of God is upon me to proclaim liberation to the oppressed and comfort to all those who mourn. The prophet Isaiah. As I walk through our neighborhood wearing a mask, socially distancing myself, my soul delights in the signs of spring. I see signs of human creativity bursting all over. Videos on how to make face masks, stories of people helping people, artists performing, worship services from churches like ours all across the country. The Associated Press reported last night, quote, the headline quote, contagious singing as Corona chorus unites voices. There's one fellow gets up, he lights a chalice, and then leads folks all around the world singing, come, come, wherever you are. That was the story. Beautiful. So we can think, we can do science, but we can create, and we can adopt behaviors to protect and care for each other. But above all, we have within us the power to love. And out of all the loss that we're going through such love, we realized our fullest freedom, our fullest life, and our fullest being. So may it be. Amen, and blessed be.
So these social distancing measures that we're practicing have obviously changed the way we perform our offertory. We ask that you might take a moment after the service to visit our website and consider clicking on the donate button located on the homepage of our website, wufp.org, to support the good works of United First Parish Church. We drink from wells we did not dig, and we sit in the shade of trees we did not plant. As the recipients of all we have received from those who came before us, we are called to share our abundance with those who will follow us. This congregation aspires to do life-affirming and life-transforming work, both for those of us who gather within these walls and for the larger web of life of which we are a part. As a voluntary association, our church is sustained through the gifts of the members and friends of our congregation. Your generosity keeps the lights on and our gardens watered. Your generosity sustains our lifespan religious education program. Your generosity supports a liberal religious voice in our greater community. Let us open our hearts as these gifts are joyfully given and gratefully received. Now I invite you to sing along with our final hymn, There Is More Love Somewhere, number 95 in the great hymnal, or you may follow along with the words on the screen.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it.
So here at United First Parish Church, we gather in many ways for spiritual growth, to nourish connection, to put our faith into action, and to participate in the life and leadership of our congregation. You can read about our upcoming and ongoing programs in our weekly announcements. And if you're not on our email list, you can contact us at info@ufpc.org. We will make sure to add you to our mailing list so that we can all remain connected. I might mention that our sabbatical minister, Reverend Bo Rivers, sent out an email within the last couple of days that she's implementing a Wednesday check-in that happens both between 2 and 3 in the afternoon and between 7 and 8 in the evening. The earlier session will be based around a reading, which she'll send out the evening before. So I'm sure there'll be more information about that on the website ufpc.org. Also today, the writing group will meet immediately following our social time, which will take place in a few minutes, right after the end of the service. So now I invite Reverend Bennett to do our benediction.
I offer these words as a benediction by the Rabbi Michael Rothbaum, who serves Congregation Beth Elohim in Acton, Massachusetts. Yes, the old ways of doing things are on hold, perhaps for longer than we realize. But this moment of rupture may be an opening to new paths, new connections, new ways of being. And if we are diligent and blessed, maybe even liberation. May we each carry the flame of peace and love in our hearts until we meet again.